Hi boys, today we're going to continue looking on with the family topic. I hope that your study is going well, you're keeping up to date with everything, and you're following through with all the activities that need to be completed. So today we're going to look at point number 4, which is the legal rights and obligations of parents and children. And then obviously we've looked at your 1, your 2 and your 3. So when we get back from the 3-week break, we're going to focus on adoption, and then we'll go into looking at your responses to family problems, and then going into your contemporary issues. Just once again, we have the textbook amendments that are there, and I've also put that into your first lesson that we had for families. So they are the Cambridge Legal Studies updates that the publishers have uploaded. So what we're looking at here, again, our themes and challenges. And some of these themes and challenges will obviously have a lot to do with the role that children play. At the bottom here, we're looking at the effectiveness of legal and non-legal responses in achieving just outcomes for family members. And if we actually sort of skip through theme number 5, you can actually see here that we've got the changing nature of parental responsibility. We're looking at CROC here, and we're looking at the Family Law Act. So what we have here is a definition of what a child is, and a child is any person under the age of 18. They can also be termed a minor. Now, the Crimes Act 1900, Section 20, actually said that a child cannot be, or a person cannot be found guilty of killing a fetus. Now, there were amendments to that, and we'll have a look at that in a minute on the next slide. In this section, there's a lot of cases that you can definitely research, and I've got 2 links at the bottom there, just about how what is the penalty for somebody that kills a child that is unborn. There's obviously, it's a grey area at times. So have a read of those articles, and this is something we'll bring up again later on. Now, with the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child, so this is CROC, and you'll see that regularly. Now, we have incorporated that into Australian law, so we've got young offenders and crime, family law, and we make sure that the child is at the centre of everything that we do. Now, the 4 basic principles of CROC are non-discrimination. The best interest of the child is paramount and should be the primary consideration, and that's a really big one that we're going to focus in on. The right to life, survival and development, the right to have views expressed and respected. And if you go to that website, the UNICEF website, you'll actually see all those elements, and you can add that into your study notes. Now, the Family Law Act is one that you're going to have to be aware of, and the objective of it basically is to ensure that children receive adequate and proper parenting to help them achieve their full potential, and to ensure that parents fulfil their duties, meet their responsibilities concerning the care, welfare and development of their children. And that could be done in very different ways, and we're going to have a look at those in a minute. Now, the next 2 slides look at your textbook amendments for that that table on page 340. And it just goes through the legislation concerning children in New South Wales. These are the things that you have to put into your study notes, and these are the things that you're going to have to discuss when and if you get asked a question that looks at how or what legislation actually is vital that we need to include when we're studying children. You've got the Adoption Act, the Child Protection Offenders Registration Act, and that's been a really big one in terms of us also knowing where people are at all times and having that offenders register. And continuing on, we've got the Children Criminal Proceedings Act. You looked at that when we were looking at young offenders in crime. Children Protection and Parental Responsibility. And this one here is responsibility of parents for the behaviour of their children, greater police powers in respect of children, such as the removal of children from public places and returning them to their parents' residence. So you're essentially, or not you, me, I'm responsible for my children and whether they're doing the right thing or not. The Children and Young Persons Care and Protection Act, Children and Young Persons Care and Protection Amendment Act in 2009. So how did that change? These two here are the amendments in your textbook. So we've got the Child Protection Working with Children's Act, which is what anyone that has anything to do with children needs to obtain. And the Child Protection Legislation Amendment Act 2014. And this is to ensure that children are placed in a stable and secure environment through permanent placements, rather than just putting children in very, not stable, not permanent places. You've got the Children's Court Act 1987, the Status of Children Act, and the Young Offenders Act. Again, they're the ones that you looked at when we were looking at the Young Offenders section in crime. Now, parental responsibilities under the Family Law Act. Parents, they have the legal and moral obligation, the responsibility of both parents to ensure that children are cared for, whether or not the parents live together. With children, the right to the care and protection of their parents, to know and be cared for by both their parents, and to have regular contact with their parents, regardless of where those parents might live. Now, with shared responsibility, what we're looking at in terms of reforms, it emphasised the child's right to meaningful family relationships and care, rather than either parent's right to have the child live with them. So let's say, for example, that child can't live with the parent for any particular reason. Maybe the parent lives far. Contact can be through regular Skype sessions, regular phone calls. It doesn't have to be that you are living with that parent full time. The next couple of slides will look at different elements of the parental responsibilities that exist under sort of the headings of food and shelter, education, medical treatment, discipline, harmony, legal activities. So we'll go through those. Just back to those legislations again. The key legislation that we have here, parents failing to fulfil their duties, so make sure they're in your notes as well. So in regards to education, you've got the Education Act 1900. Parents can't refuse their children education, and it's our responsibility as teachers that if kids aren't coming to school, then we need to contact the authorities, or we need to make note of it, and if it's something that's more significant or often, then we do go to fax. Compulsory schooling is from 6 to 17. Kids can leave before 17, but they've got to have an apprentice, and there's a lot of other, requirements there. Discipline is also another one. So what we're looking at with discipline, what's reasonable? The force must be reasonable. I mean, if you're belting, that's obviously unreasonable force. So if you are, yelling or, a light tap or whatever it is, that would be considered acceptable, but bashing someone obviously would not. In your textbook here, you have a whole section on medical treatment, and we're looking at the different age groups. So we're looking at children under the age of 14, and we're just looking at that here. We're then looking at for those children between 14 and 16, and then we're looking at children that are over 16. So make sure you put that into your notes. Now, when we look at the amendment here, for children under 14 years old, the consent of a parent is required, and parents have the right to authorise any such treatment they consider to be in the child's best interest. If the parent failed to provide the necessary treatment, it can amount to criminal negligence, and that's whether you will fail to take them to the doctor, give them the correct medicine, whatever that is. When we look at for the ages between 14 and 16, either the child's consent or a parent's consent is required. Medical or dental treatment of young people between 16 or 17 requires the consent of the young person, and then we'll go through that. And then again, there's been some amendments there in regards to the blood transfusion and religious beliefs, and that sort of comes into that there.